To make your text content as legible and approachable as possible, it's important to lay it out properly. That means applying proper text formatting to your content. To make this as easy as possible, WordPress comes with a ton of built-in tools for precisely this purpose. In fact, working with text in WordPress is not that dissimilar from working with text in a word processing application. That said, all text formatting should be done within WordPress. Previously in this course, I created a new post that has some standard text. Now you'll remember that the original post had some formatting to it. We have the title, of course, and then we have a set of subtitles here, here, and here. And there's also some subtle things like a piece of italicized text and so on. When we moved this text into WordPress.com, we also stripped off all formatting to make sure that we don't have formatting that comes from Word that's applied to the web, because that never works properly. Now I need to reapply that formatting so that my text here appears the way it's supposed to. And I can also add some extra formatting if I want to. Text formatting is applied using the toolbar here at the top. Now I've clicked on the Show Hide Kitchen Sink button again to only show the first toolbar so you can see how that works first. The functions on the toolbar work much like what you would expect. Let's say you have a word that you want to make bold. You simply highlight it and hit the bold button. It becomes bold and you can move on. If you want to take the bold off, you simply click on the word again and click on the bold button again. Same for italicized. I have a word down here that I want to be italicized, right here. So I select that word, click italicize, and it automatically becomes italicized. Now keep in mind that how this appears will depend on the theme you are using. So you don't actually know right now what this is going to look like on the front end. To see that, you have to preview the post, and we'll do that in a second. But first, let's take a look at the other options that are on this toolbar. A common thing you often see in blogs is that people either write something and then later on strike it out because they changed it, or they strike out a certain word because they want it to be snarky or funny. So let's say I add a new sentence here, and then use the strike through function to say something more than I originally wanted to say. For example, I'm saying here that this sentence is important, but in fact it isn't, and just highlight the important and then use the strike through. And that way, when the reader sees the sentence, they can still read the word, but it's obvious that I used a strike through in it, and thereby I am communicating more than simply saying the sentence without that word. You can also use the strike through if you're doing edits to your post and you want to show people that there used to be something there. And this is actually a really responsible way of doing edits to your post, because otherwise people may read something and then they come back and what they read is gone, and that's never good. Next to strike through, you have unordered and ordered lists. And these are built much the same way you would build lists in any other application. You simply find where you want to put them. Here I'm going to make an unordered list first with an item. And if I want this to be an item, I simply click on unordered list. And now every time I hit return, it becomes another bullet. If I want to get out of it, I simply hit return one more time and I escape the list. If I want to add more items, I simply go back to the list and add more items. I can now change this list to a numbered list simply by selecting an item and clicking on the number. Then again, I have to go back and reinitialize each of the lines. Here I'm hitting delete to go back and then adding a new line item. And now you see there are numbered lists, and it works the same way. I'll add new numbers by hitting return once, escape it by hitting return twice. Next to ordered lists, you have this quote symbol, and this is actually quite interesting. On the web, you have something called a block quote. A block quote is when you pull part of your content out of the content and display it separately. So for example, in this article, there's a sentence that says, "So a VCR is like a time machine." I can use this sentence and break it out into a block quote separately, and it'll display as a broken out quote within my article. You often see this in newspaper articles and magazines, and you can also do it on the web. So I'll copy this sentence and paste it in below here, and then I'll simply leave my cursor on the sentence and click on the block quote button. This will indent the text and change the styling somewhat, and this signifies that this has become a block quote. Now, to understand how a block quote affects the text, we actually have to do a preview. So I'm going to save my draft at this point and click on preview. It opens in a separate tab, and when I scroll down, you'll see here we have that block quote. Now, the smart thing about block quotes is that they actually change the markup of the page, meaning when the browser reads this, it'll be able to understand that this is a quote, whereas this is just a paragraph. So it'll be separated out, and if someone is using a text-to-speech browser, they'll actually be told that this is a quote that's been broken out of the main context of the text. The three next buttons, the alignment left, center, and right buttons, are buttons you should never use. That's simply because your theme will control how your content is aligned, and you shouldn't mess with that, because when you mess with the alignment of web content, strange things can very easily happen. We're going to skip the link buttons and the more tag for now. The next one is proofread writing, which gives you proofreader capability. So if I click on that, it'll immediately proofread my content, and when I save it, it'll tell me if something's amiss in my content. We have the distraction-free writing mode button, which pops my content out in a distraction-free environment. And here you see, if I don't use my mouse, the user interface disappears and I can write without being distracted by anything. And all I have to do is move my mouse around to get the user interface to come back. When I'm done using distraction-free writing, I can either save my post or click exit full screen to go back to the regular view. Then we get to the kitchen sink. So here I'll activate it again and we can take a look. The most important thing under Kitchen Sink is this dropdown that gives you different types of formatting for your content. And this is what you'll actually be using the most. You'll remember that this separate line here is actually a subheading, and this is how you would apply that subheading. You highlight the text or put your cursor on the line, then you drop down the format picker and select the appropriate formatting. My tip is to always use heading 2 and below for subheadings. You should never use heading 1 because on your page, you already have a heading, and that's the title. So now I can apply heading 2 to my headings. So I'll scroll down here, find the second one, apply heading 2, and the third one, and apply heading 2. This formatting is actually really important because if you have a long article with multiple headings and subheadings and sub-subheadings, and you use these headings, when Google and other search engines and other engines online read the content, they'll actually understand the hierarchy of your post. So they'll understand when something is a main heading and when other things is under a subheading. So computers can understand the content and the context in which it's being presented. The rest of the features here are pretty self-explanatory. You have underline, which is just underlining a word. Like with bold and italicized and strike through, you simply click on it again to remove it. You have another alignment that you should never touch. You have a color feature that you should never touch because the colors are also controlled by the theme. You have your paste as plain text and paste from Word. You have a button that removes formatting. So let's say I take these two words here and I apply bold and italicized and strike through and underline. It looks nice and over formatted. All I have to do is simply highlight it and click on remove formatting, and all of it except for strike through is automatically removed. There's a button here for inserting custom characters, and this is very useful if you want to insert something like a pi symbol. So here I can use that, find the pi symbol and insert it in. Next to that we have indentation, where you can highlight a paragraph and indent it. Of course, once it's indented, you can also use the opposite to outdent it to move it back where it was. And you have an undo and a redo button. Combined, the features in this toolkit will allow you to format your content in pretty much any way you want. Just remember, anytime you see formatting in a document that's elsewhere or a document that you got off the web, you need to strip all the formatting off and put it back in using WordPress. That way you're certain that the formatting will be applied correctly and that it'll work with the functions of WordPress. When you're done formatting your content, always remember to click Save Draft. Because even though WordPress.com does autosaves on your content all the time, it's important to leave a mark saying, this is where I actually save the content. Because as we'll see later in the course, you can now go back in time and look at your different save points and what you did to change your content.